Good afternoon and welcome to episode 6. I'm Melissa, your host, with another amazing Friday edition of Coalition Conversations. We'll be discussing reshoring and reestablishing the supply chain. The pandemic has highlighted many changes needed in the U.S., and one of them being that we should not be relying on global supply chains. We should be protecting our supply chains from the inevitability of highly disruptive black swan events that could and actually did result in significant production delays. In addition to having shorter supply chains, reshoring brings jobs, assets, and resources back to the U.S. Today, we're in for a real treat, as my guest is Harry Moser, founder and president of the Reshoring Initiative. Harry, thanks for joining me. How are you?
It's great to be here. Thank you, Melissa.
Oh, thank you. So tell us a little bit about yourself, the background, and the mission of the Reshoring Initiative, please.
Okay, I'll try and tie it all together. So I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, which is right across the river from New York City. And the biggest thing in town was Singer's sewing machine. So Singer's main world factory was there. Back around 1910, it was the biggest manufacturing facility anywhere in the world, 2.5 million square feet, 5,000 workers. It was a Goliath, you know. And my grandfather was a foreman. My dad ran a third of it. I worked there summers. I went past 20 years ago, and it's all gone. As far as I can tell, Singer imports everything from offshore. And I pulled over as I drove past, and I cried for what the city, my family, the country had lost. And it wasn't just Singer. Throughout my career, I sold machine tools, CNC machine tools, foundry equipment, things like that. And I say, I'm going to sell to that industry and that company, and they'd go out of business because imports wiped them out. So I saw the decline of U.S. manufacturing primarily because of the impact of all the imports and the trade deficit. So having lived through that, I said, when I retire, I'm going to do something about it. And when I retired, I did. So to get from there to the retirement, I grew up in Elizabeth, went to MIT, got engineering degrees, eventually got an MBA from the University of Chicago, worked in GE, went back and worked at MIT, Diesematic foundry equipment, Acme Cleveland, one of the great old U.S. manufacturing companies. I worked there, and they had the national Acme brand of lathes, entirely gone. Became president of Rotofinish. That was my first presidency. And then the height of my career prior to the Reshoring Initiative was at Charmy. It was called Charmy. It's EDM and high-speed milling machines. And okay. I worked there for 25 years, started as president, retired as chairman emeritus. And I was blessed. Wonderful team, wonderful products. When I started, we were number 6 or 7 in the industry in North America, and 7 or 8 years later, we were number 1. So it was, as good a ride, as good a career time. I was blessed to have been there. Then I started the Reshoring Initiative in 2010. So the Reshoring Initiative is a nonprofit. And our mission is to eliminate the trade deficit. I mean, fairly similar to what CPA wants to accomplish. And, and eliminating the trade deficit will result in about 5 million manufacturing jobs. Almost all the economic analyses would come to that same conclusion, about 5 million jobs. And that's assuming that the jobs come back at the current level of U.S. productivity, which is, obviously a reasonable starting point. And so it'd be 5 million jobs, a 40% increase in U.S. manufacturing. Those who are listening, think of your company, your manufacturing company, and imagine 40% more business. It'd be awesome. It'd be incredible. So that's our mission. And to do that, it would be a combination of what we call reshoring, which is a U.S. headquartered company bringing the work back, plus foreign direct investment. In other words, a foreign company, Toyota, Siemens, somebody like that, bringing work here. And the two trends are really the same thing, because in both cases, the company is deciding that it makes more sense, they'll be more profitable if they produce in the market for the market, if they localize, rather than producing somewhere else and shipping to the market. So we look at the sum of those two. We've made very good progress, much more than people expected 10 years ago when we started. In 2010, the sum of the FDI and the reshoring, the sum of those two was an announcements of 6,000 jobs in that year. And by the year 2017, 190,000. So more than 30 times as many per year, driven significantly by the tax and regulatory reductions, the more business-friendly environment in 2017. But then the trade war came along, and we had business uncertainty. We had companies, they say, I don't know how long the tariffs are going to apply to what product, from what country, for how long. Let's just wait. Let's not build any new factories. Let's wait and see what happens. So a combination of that business uncertainty plus the dollar having gone up, which makes us less competitive, brought the rate down moderately in 2018 and 2019, and then we had the trade wars there, and then we had COVID in 2020, and I thought it was going to be horrible. And actually, the total for reshoring, so by U.S. companies, hit an all-time peak in 2020. So it came up very, very strongly, and the total between reshoring and FDI came out around 150,000, so a nice number. And interestingly, when you look at the statistics from March, when COVID really got going, till the end of the year, about 60% of the cases of reshoring said that the COVID was a major reason for them to reshore. It was a combination of making PPE because we needed the PPE, and also companies just saying things are so messed up, supply chains are so disrupted, we need to bring the work back.
Nice. So I'm on your site right now, and I actually see the big numbers here. That 955,000 companies, according to your data,
jobs
have been brought in from offshoring since manufacturing from 2010 to 2020. So if you want to take a look at more information too, head to the website. It is up on our page right now, and then we'll have links to it afterwards on the replay of this. What did you see the degree that the pandemic disrupted the supply chains, and how did it affect the sourcing?
Yeah, well, at first the disruption was very painful, especially for PPE shortages, because not only was supply messed up, but demand went up by a factor of 2, 3, 4. So demand was huge, and we didn't make it here. We imported almost everything from offshore. And so that was the initial disruption. Now there's still shortages. There's problems significantly driven by COVID. For example, there's maybe not enough truck drivers or not enough port workers to get things in. There's problems with, as a result of the surges that have hit the system, there's problems with shortages of containers in China and Europe to ship things to the United States. So about 45% of product that comes to the port is scheduled for a ship, doesn't get on the ship because there aren't enough containers to fill the product and put them on the ship. And so there's significant delays in the deliveries, and there's also the price to ship the product to the United States has gone up 150, 200%, something like that, to dramatically, I think, record high levels. Now, that's tough for the people that are shipping the stuff, but from a reshoring perspective, anything that raises the relative cost of the offshore product, the import, is in the long run good for the country, because it gets companies here to recognize those risks and to make better decisions. At the same time that the ocean freight is messed up, the companies, well, some of them would say, well, okay, I'll pay and send it by air freight, but the air freight isn't very effective either, because so much of the air freight traditionally went on passenger planes, and there's only maybe a third as many passenger planes flying internationally, so that available cargo capacity is way down. So it's just very difficult for companies to get things. So it's obviously COVID's horrible. It's horrible that it all happened, but companies are starting to recognize that there's a lot of logic in sourcing here. So to put that in perspective, the reason we head so much offshoring in the first place is a question of relative manufacturing costs or X works or FOB price. So we've got very good statistics comparing US to other countries. And for example, on the average, our manufacturing cost, our FOB price is 30 or 40% higher than China's, and maybe 15 or 20% higher than Europe's. And so in your company, you're looking at 30, 40% differences. You can understand why they go to get it, because if they don't, their competitor does, and then they're out of business. So I'm not defending they're doing it, but I can understand that there's such a big impact on them that they feel forced to do it. And so, in the long run, to reduce this, we need the U.S. government to act on the U.S. dollar. CPA and the Reshoring Initiative both agree the dollar is 20 to 30% overvalued, and that if the government did one thing, if I did one thing to get the dollar down by 20 or 30% over a couple of year time period, would be the best thing you could do for the economy. But also we need much more investment in skilled workforce, and we need an apprenticeship system like Germany's or Switzerland. We need more engineers, even if we don't get quite as many philosophers and anthropologists. And so the resources have to be shifted to what the economy needs, and the economy needs toolmakers and engineers if we're going to compete.
Yeah. So overall, what can companies do? If somebody's interested and they want to take some interest in what the Reshoring Initiative is doing, how can they get involved?
Yeah. So probably the most important is our TCO, Total Cost of Ownership Estimator. So they go online to the website, and you in the blue bar at the top, TCO Estimator, and you go to that page, you sign up, you sign in, and that helps you do an apples to apples comparison of a U.S. source versus a foreign source, your own factory in both locations or outsourced in either location. And so it starts with the FOB price. Let's say this is the U.S., say it's 10 and China is 8, or Germany or Switzerland, or whatever it is. And then you answer questions, and the system adds in duty, freight, packaging, carrying cost of inventory, travel costs, the value of a made in USA label, the risk of stocking out, all this kind of stuff, the green considerations. And that adds in 15, 20, 25%. And maybe it turns out that the U.S. total cost is lower than that offshore cost, but you don't know that until you've done the math. And the TCO estimator is the only standard available tool to help you do that. So it's for those who are listening, the impact of this is huge. I did a study of 180 cases of China versus the U.S., where companies have gone in, done the calculation, and using price, the U.S. won 8% of the time. Using total cost 32% of the time, and if there happened to be a 15% Trump tariff, then 46% of the time. So doing the math correctly, using the correct metric, and considering if there might happen to be a tariff, means 20, 30, 40% of the work that's now offshore can be brought back just by doing the math correctly. So use TCO.
It's amazing.
Second, find out whether reshoring makes sense for some of your product. It's not going to be for all, because some of the stuff over there is a third of the U.S. price. I can't do the math well enough to get it back, but do the analysis. Easiest thing to bring back is what you have outsourced offshore. So it's easier to finish off your order with a foundry there and then order from a foundry here than it is to shut down your factory there and build a factory here. Minimize pain. Think about the work you have that is causing pain, where there's delivery delays, quality issues, too much inventory, something like that. And therefore, each of those will have champions or allies within the company that'll help you and advocate for bringing the work back. Avoid silos. The procurement department is typically rewarded for buying the cheapest thing, and you need to get them to consider the needs of all the other departments, the rest of the constituencies within the company. We offer a program to help big companies do that analysis. They can contact us, and then we offer another program, the import substitution program, which is really reshoring, and what that does, a company can, say a machine shop, they can say, I'm really good at making widgets, okay, and then we identify for them who the biggest importers are of widgets, what tonnage they're bringing in, whom they're buying them from, roughly what they're paying for them. And then we train the widget company to use total cost analysis to make the case with the importer that the importer will be 5, 10, 15 percentage points more profitable if it buys from the US company instead of continuing to import. Okay, so we have that program underway through directly with companies and through MEPs, manufacturing extension partnerships in various regions of the country. So anybody interested, contact us. We're glad to give you details about it. We also have a program for states in which we can identify the biggest U.S. supply chain gaps. Think masks, gowns, gloves, things like that. So we can identify the biggest supply chain gaps, and we can focus it down to what's best for that state to bring back, like what their biggest companies buy a lot of, for example. And so we can narrow down, get down to a short list, and then the state can either get local companies or the foreign current suppliers to come over and invest and expand in the U.S. and fill that gap, so we're no longer dependent on offshore. So we've got programs for the big companies, the small companies, the states. We got something for everybody here to help them out. Obviously, investing in automation, lean skills is very important, because maybe if you start off this much difference, maybe TCO gets you to there, and then you need to do automation and lean and skills and employee engagement to get the U.S. down a little bit below the other so that they'll proceed. So there's lots of opportunities.
Nice. You guys are doing some amazing work over there. I'm going to put up your Twitter. Are you pretty active on your Twitter account?
We're active on Twitter, bigger on LinkedIn, I think, but we get things on both of them multiple times a day. So we get a lot done.
And you do have a really good blog too.
Good. If companies have cases where they've reshored, we have we're the host or sponsor of the National Metalworking Reshoring Award and the National Sewn Products Reshoring Award. And so companies can report their cases via those competitions and win. And if they win, we'll promote it. And I bet CPA will even announce the winner on some of their media. So you can be famous all over, including at the Reshoring Initiative and at CPA.
Two big organizations working together. Absolutely. Well, Harry, thank you so much for joining me today. You can find more on information on the Reshoring Initiative by visiting their site at reshorenow.org. And thank you all for tuning into Coalition Conversations. Your continued support helps us continue to grow, research, and advocate for domestic manufacturers in all areas of agriculture, farming, labor, and consumers. Please consider donating, or better yet, become part of the CPA, our nonprofit organization, as a member. Don't forget to check out our upcoming virtual trade conference, sponsored by MFG Gear. We have a great 4 days lined up with panel speakers who are just as excited to hear from you during the annual CPA Trade Conference. Learn more on our site at prosperousamerica.org. And everybody, enjoy your weekend. Harry, thanks again.
Thank you,
Bye.
Melissa. Pleasure. Bye, everybody.